James Monroe, America's fifth president and the last of the founding fathers to hold the office. Most people only know his name from the Monroe Doctrine, but his life was packed with remarkable events, unexpected twists, and defining choices that shaped the nation. From dueling with debts to crossing icy rivers in battle, Monroe lived a story that was just as dramatic as the era he governed. Today on Era Unlocked, we're uncovering 10 fascinating facts about James Monroe you probably didn't learn in school. Fact 1. A wounded revolutionary. Before Monroe was president, he was a soldier in the Revolutionary War, and not just any soldier. At only 18 years old, he joined Washington's Continental Army and fought in the famous Battle of Trenton in 1776. During that icy Christmas crossing of the Delaware River, Monroe was shot in the shoulder, nearly dying as an artery was severed. He carried that scar for the rest of his life, a constant reminder that the nation was born out of blood and sacrifice. Unlike some politicians who talked about liberty from the sidelines, Monroe had literally bled for the cause. Fact 2. A friend to Jefferson and Madison. Monroe wasn't just another Virginian politician. He was part of a tight-knit circle with Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. Jefferson actually mentored Monroe, encouraging his legal studies and later supporting his political career. Madison became both a friend and rival, especially when their visions for the country didn't always align. These relationships mattered. In early America, alliances were everything, and Monroe's closeness to Jefferson and Madison helped him rise in politics. But it also meant he sometimes lived in their shadows, fighting to prove his own identity. Fact 3. Governor during chaos. Before the presidency, Monroe served as governor of Virginia, not once, but multiple times. His terms weren't peaceful either. He faced everything from food shortages to slave revolts to the lingering fear of British attacks during the early 1800s. Being governor during that turbulent era meant Monroe had to balance defending the state with keeping its economy stable. His governorship tested his patience, but it also built his reputation as a leader who could keep calm in the face of crisis, a skill that followed him to the White House. Fact 4. A diplomat in France. Long before becoming president, Monroe was sent overseas as a diplomat. One of his biggest jobs? Representing the United States in France during the 1790s, a time when France was in the middle of its own bloody revolution. Monroe quickly gained popularity with French leaders and even defended the revolutionary government when others in America were cautious. But this loyalty backfired. George Washington himself thought Monroe had gone too far and eventually recalled him. Still, Monroe's time in Europe shaped his views and gave him first-hand experience in the delicate art of diplomacy. Fact 5. The Louisiana Purchase's unsung hero. Most people credit Thomas Jefferson for the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, but Monroe played a key role. Jefferson sent him to Paris to help negotiate with Napoleon's government. Originally, the mission was just to buy New Orleans and secure trade along the Mississippi River. But Napoleon shocked the Americans by offering the entire Louisiana Territory, a deal that doubled the size of the United States. Monroe helped finalize the details, making him one of the unsung heroes of the purchase that forever changed America's map. Fact 6. The era of good feelings. By the time Monroe became president in 1817, America was exhausted from years of conflict. The War of 1812 had divided the country and left scars on both politics and morale. But under Monroe, something rare happened, a period of relative unity known as the era of good feelings. With the Federalist Party fading away, there was little political opposition. For a time, Americans actually felt united in purpose. It didn't last forever, but it gave Monroe's presidency a reputation for stability and optimism at a moment when the young nation desperately needed both. Fact 7. The Missouri Compromise. Of course, not everything during Monroe's presidency was cheerful. In 1820, the nation nearly broke apart over the issue of slavery's expansion. Missouri wanted to join the Union as a slave state, but that threatened to upset the balance between free and slave states. The Missouri Compromise was the solution. Missouri entered as a slave state, Maine was admitted as a free state, and Congress drew a line across the Louisiana Territory to limit slavery's expansion. Monroe signed it, temporarily easing tensions. But in hindsight, it was only a pause. The slavery debate would explode into civil war decades later. Fact 8. The Monroe Doctrine. Perhaps the most famous part of Monroe's legacy came in 1823, when he announced what became known as the Monroe Doctrine. In simple terms, the Americas were off-limits to new European colonization, and the U.S. would see any attempt to interfere as a hostile act. While Monroe himself didn't write every word, much credit goes to his Secretary of State, John Quincy Adams. The doctrine became a cornerstone of U.S. foreign policy for centuries. It showed the world that the United States was no longer a fragile experiment, but a power ready to defend its hemisphere. Fact 9. A president in poverty. Despite his achievements, Monroe's personal finances were a disaster. Like Jefferson, he spent beyond his means, often living on credit while maintaining a grand lifestyle. By the end of his presidency, he was drowning in debt. He even had to sell his plantation, Highland, to cover costs. In retirement, Monroe relied on his daughter's support, and when he died in 1831, he was buried with little wealth to his name. The irony of a man who helped shape a wealthy, growing nation, but died poor, wasn't lost on his contemporaries. Fact 10. Death on the 4th of July. In a strange twist of fate, Monroe joined Jefferson and Adams in dying on Independence Day. On July 4, 1831, exactly 5 years after Jefferson and Adams passed away on the nation's 50th anniversary, Monroe also died. He became the third founding father president to pass on America's birthday. For many Americans at the time, this eerie pattern felt like divine symbolism, as though the generation of independence had truly sealed its chapter in history. From soldier to diplomat, from president of unity to signer of compromise, James Monroe's life was anything but ordinary. He carried scars from war, debts from a lifetime of ambition, and a legacy that shaped America's path for generations. Which of these facts surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next era we unlock.